Today on Poker for Pound Pups, a masterclass in misplaying Ace King, getting it all in with 5 high, and I play a bad hand, face up, and get rewarded for it. Coming at you today from Grayton Casino in the North Bay, playing 2, 3, 5. Let's get into these hands. In the first playable hand of the day, Under the Gun +1 opens to $15, and I 3-bet my Ace King offsuit in the cutoff to 50. The button calls, and Under the Gun +1 calls, and we're going 3 ways to a flop with Ace King off. Flop comes out Ace Jack 10 with 2 clubs. It's a board that's going to favor me, but I also could be running into some 2 pairs. I bet $65 and both opponents call. The turn brings in the 9 of clubs, so the front door flush gets there. There are now a bunch of 2 pair hands. I could be losing a king queen, and multi-way in between 2 players with just a single pair. I think I should check it back, which is what I do when it gets to me. The button bets 150, Under the Gun +1 folds, and instead of calling, I decide I don't want to expose myself to multiple barrels, and I just give up and I fold. I hate this play. In hindsight, I'm going to have the best hand most of the time. However, the button told me later on that he thought that I had ace king, which is why he bet 150. So he didn't tell me what he had, but I think I was probably losing. Nevertheless, I can't be folding to a $150 bet into a pot that is more than twice that. Well, you know what they say. If ace king doesn't work, try 5-4 suited. I'm sitting in the hijack with 5-4 of diamonds. I open to $20 and get called by the big blind and Under the Gun +2. Flop comes out queen 6-4 with 2 diamonds. We do have some queens here on occasion, but this flop isn't especially great for our range, and I'm working on avoiding punting my stack off in multi-way pots. But it doesn't get much better for our particular hand as we flop the front door flush draw and a gut shot, so when it checks over to me, I see bet $50. The big blind decides he's done with his hand, he throws his cards away, but Under the Gun +2 pays $50 to see a turn card. Turn is the ace of spades. No good for my combo draw, but it's excellent for my range. And if he happened to call me on the flop with a single pair, like a queen or maybe a 6, he's going to hate this card and he's going to be in bad shape. So rather than relying on the river to bring me a winner, I'd much rather just take advantage of any fold equity that I have and get rid of all of his queens by shoving all in. And that's what I do. I put all $237 in there. He thinks about it for a few seconds and sticks in the call. So we're all in with 5 high. We proudly show it and hope to get luck on the river.
You're not supposed to call that.
The 3 of spades comes in, giving us the straight. We got pretty lucky there with our combo draw, but we will take it and keep moving. At a new table after a food break. Been card dead for a while before this hand, which we joined a little late. To catch up on the pre-flop action, we have ace queen offsuit in the low jack. Under the Gun +1 and 2 both limp for $5 each, and I raise it up to 25. It folds back to them. They both make the call, and we see a flop of 9-6 deuce, which checks around. 6 of hearts comes on the turn, bringing in a flush draw and pairing the board. Under the Gun +1 takes the betting lead for $30, and +2 quickly folds. If +2 had called, I probably would just get out of the way. But so far at this table, Under the Gun +1 has been betting anytime he's seen weakness trying to steal the pot. So I think that's what's going on here. He could have a 6 or a 9, and he could have limped with something like pocket deuces, but I lean towards him trying to steal this one, so we put in the call. The river brings in a jack, and he bets $100 this time, and I go into the tank. I just don't believe him, and I could put in the hero call, but I'd rather put pressure on his weaker 2 pair hands rather than making that hero call and losing. If he has trips or better, then this is an obvious punt, but I go for it. I grab some chips, which end up being about $230, and I fire. He doesn't take too long before folding. I show ace queen, and he tells me, "You're bluffing with the best hand." Feels good to have gotten the right read and to take down another medium-sized pot. Jack 10 of puppy toes under the gun. We open it up to $20 and get call after call after call before the big blind decides he wants to bump up the price of poker to $105. Now, putting myself in his shoes, this is a really easy squeeze spot with all these callers and dead money. He's going to do this with really good hands, but he's also going to do it with some random ace high hands as well. So I decide this time I'm going to give him some action. I stick in the call. A few people fold before the small blind elects to play as well. So he sticks in the call, and we're going 3 ways to a flop, which comes out queen 10-6. The small blind checks, and the big blind decides he does not want a c bet. He checks it back as well. If he had aces or kings, I think he c bets this flop to get value out of all queens and tens. So my 10 might actually be good here, depending on what the small blind does. I stick in a bet of $150 with kind of a semi bluff mentality, figuring out where I'm at. If I end up getting action, I'm going to slow down and see if I can either improve by the river or find a cheap showdown. The small blind folds. The big blind thinks about it for a little bit longer before ultimately throwing his cards into the muck as well, and we take down a nice medium-sized pot. 10-9 of hearts in the big blind, and it's limp city with 4 people throwing in $5 at a time. It gets to me, and it's a perfect squeeze spot. We'd love to just take down all this dead money, but if we do get action, we've got a hand that flops really well. I bump it up to $40, and under the gun calls, and everyone else gets out of the way. So we're going heads up to a flop, which comes out ace, king, jack, rainbow. Not good for my hand, but it's great for my range. I'm going to have way more aces and kings than he does. I'm going to have way more two pairs. I'm going to have way more netted hands. So even though we only have backdoor hearts and a gutter ball, we see bet for 45. It doesn't take too long for him to put in the call, so it might take a few barrels to get this one done. Visualize the perfect turn card, and that's exactly what we get. The queen of hearts comes in, giving us the straight. Now it's a matter of getting as much money into the pot as we can without scaring him off. So hopefully at this point, he's got 2 pair and gets a little bit sticky. I put out a bet of $75, and it takes him about 2 seconds to announce that he is all in. Well, that's nice. I double check the board just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And sure enough, we have the nut straight. He probably does as well, but we have hearts. I announce that I think I'm free rolling, and I stick in the call. Our opponent turns over king 10 offsuit, so he's got the straight as well, but he has no heart. Hoping for some luck on the river, and we get the 8 of spades. No luck, no flush, so we go chop chop, but it is nice to get an $800 free roll. Oh, ace king offsuit, the bane of my existence. This hand starts off with a limp party with under the gun +2, the low jack, and the cutoff, all putting in $5 at a time. I decide to raise it up, and I don't like my sizing. I go $35, and everybody calls. Probably need to go a little bit bigger there, so maybe I can go heads up. Flop comes out jack 10-6 with 2 spades, so I've got 2 overcards and a gutter to the nuts. It checks around to the cutoff, who decides to lead for $55. Definitely not going to fold at this point. The cutoff has been kind of a wild player. I've seen him do all sorts of unorthodox things, not necessarily with a rhyme or reason, so I certainly can't be folding in position with 2 overs and a gutter. Under the gun +2 decides he wants to call, and the low jack says he wants to see another card as well. So we go 4 ways to a turn, which comes in an ace. Checks to the cutoff, and he bets 105 this time. So I think about this for a second. If he had been leading with a jack on the flop, the ace should be a scare card for him. I definitely want to get rid of all the other gut shots out there. And I'm really not sure where I stand. I have no idea what's going on with +2 or the low jack. I haven't been playing at this table for too long. So I do a kind of find out where I stand raise to 225, thinking I'm going to have the best hand some of the time. And if somebody comes over the top, I'm just going to go ahead and get out of the way. +2 says, well, I guess it's time to go home now, and goes all in for 286. Now, those of you who played quite a bit know that sometimes people just have it and are Hollywooding when they say something like this, and sometimes they're on a draw. So I'm not sure where he stands, but for only another $60 or so, I really can't be folding unless somebody else comes over the top with a shove of their own. Thankfully, the low jack gets out of the way, and the cutoff just calls, leaving me with a $60 call to figure out what is going on the river. The river brings in a king. So now I have 2 pair, but there's also a 4-liner out there to a straight. The cutoff checks, and I really don't see him playing this hand with king queen or queen 9, betting 2 streets and then checking the river. So when he checks, I think I'm almost always going to have the best hand here unless he has something like a set. So I bet $100 for value, thinking I'm probably not good for the main pot, but discounting the chances of my opponent having a straight, I think I'm good here. I bet 100 for value. He thinks for a second and sticks in the call. When he decides on just a call, I know I'm probably good. I show my ace king, and indeed it is. He shows jack 10 for a flop top 2 pair that got rivered. So while I win the side pot,
Under the gun +2 shows queen 9 offsuit. He indeed had gone all in with a draw on the turn and happened to hit his open-ended straight. He takes down the big main pot. I think I royally screwed this hand up, but I will take making $100 back on that river value bet on the side pot.
The sporadic player we mentioned earlier has been mostly loose and passive, and he opens this time in the low jack for $20. We look down at pocket jacks sitting in the hijack and 3-bet to $55 to isolate. Sure enough, it folds back around and the low jack makes the call. We go heads up in position to a flop of queen 6-5. In a previous hand, I saw him flat call a single raised pot with pocket kings. I do think he would have 4-bet me with aces, but since he open called, the range I put him on is any pair above sevens plus some ace king and some ace queen. I would guess he'd probably limp call anything with sevens and below, though. So a set is unlikely. So I'm probably ahead here most of the time. I'm going to c-bet this to fold out ace king and get value from his weaker pocket pairs that missed. So I size up to $100. He takes 3 nanoseconds to put in the call. The turn is an 8 of spades, which hits him a lot harder than it hits me. So I check back for pot control and to prevent value owning myself in case I happen to be behind. The river's a 3 of spades, so backdoor spades get there, but I find it highly unlikely that he called a $100 bet on the flop with backdoor spades, and I don't see him having pocket threes here, so this seems like a brick. The low jack puts in 4 $25 chips, and I pretty quickly make the call. He turns over pocket tens, and we scoop a $523 pot. 10-6 suited is not a good hand, and I'm not a fan of limping. But with this 2-3-5 structure, I've already put $2 in for being on the button. There's some passive players behind me who are unlikely to raise. We have a suited hand, and we're pretty deep. So for these reasons, when it limps to me, I decide to put in the extra $3. Thankfully, the small blind and big blind call and check respectively, so we go 5 ways to a flop of king 8-3 with 2 diamonds. The small blind bets $15 and it folds around to the cutoff. He decides seeing another card is also worth $15, and I think the only play here is for me to call as well. We do so and see a turn, which comes the 7 of diamonds. We get there on the flush. The small blind slows down and checks, but the cutoff bets $35. Okay, I could fast play this and protect against the board pairing or a 4th diamond coming where we lose to a higher flush, but I think that will only fold out weaker hands, and there is the possibility that we're up against a higher flush. So we just call in position, and the small blind does as well. The river is a total brick. The small blind checks again. This time the cutoff checks too. And I can't see both players checking a flush here. So we have to be good. We throw out a value bet of $80. The small blind doesn't take too long, puts in the call, and the cutoff folds. We show 10-6 of diamonds, and of course it's good. He shows 2 pair and tosses his cards away in disgust. Another $328 join our chip stack, and we are rewarded for playing lousy cards face up. The last hand of the day is ace 5 of spades in the cutoff. We get limper number 1, limper number 2, limper number 3. Limping's not allowed, you guys. We raise it up to $40 and we get called by the big blind, by under the gun +1, and by the low jack. That's not great. So come on, spades. We get a flop of 8-5-3 with 1 spade, so we've got a pair and a backdoor flush draw. That is something. It checks to me. We know the right play here is to check, but in the moment I was competitive. I wanted to take it down, so I said, you know what? I'm just going to represent an overpair. So I fire 115 and get rewarded with the big blind folding, +1 folding, and the low jack calls. Uh-oh. This low jack has been tight and aggressive, so at worst he has a decent draw, but on this board, more than likely he's got a pair at least. If he had a set, I don't know if he fast plays this or if he would just trap me and string me along. I'm not sure, but the turn is a jack. I don't see him floating the flop for 115 with the jack high, so this looks like a brick to me, and he checks. I'm on the fence between continuing the story that I have an overpair versus trying to find my way to a showdown as cheaply as possible, with the potential to improve on the river with either an ace or a 5. This time, I take the safer route and check it back, and the river brings in a 4. Okay, not the worst card. We've got third pair. 6-7, which would have flopped open-ended, makes it to the straight, but otherwise, this card really shouldn't improve too many hands based on how it's turned out. The low jack bets $100 into a pot of 388. The sizing doesn't look designed to get me to fold. It looks like a value bet or maybe a blocker bet sizing. So what would he be betting here for value? A pair of eights, maybe another pocket pair, or would he just check those back? I need to be good here only 17% of the time, And though it doesn't feel good, I just close my eyes and make the call. And he shows us ace 3 suited. Our pair of fives is good. We finish the day with a $588 pot, and it feels good.
People looked at me like I was crazy when I called with ace 5 for $100. I'm like, look how much is in the pot. I don't know about that first ace king hand before the break. And may have had the best hand. Maybe if I keep firing, I'm in good shape. But I think I prevented a catastrophe there. Speaking of catastrophes, the ace king hand where I rivered 2 pair, that was horrible. Horrible. Multi-way, I need to slow down. At least I salvaged it with the value bet on the river to get a little bit back.
So to wrap things up, we were in for a total of $1,100 and cashed out for $2,107 for a profit of just over $1K. That means we are back in black for 3-5. Let's hope it keeps running that way. Please like, subscribe, share the video with anyone who you think might enjoy it, and hit that bell icon for notifications. I look forward to your suggestions and the comments on how you would play something differently or where you think I can improve my game in general. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Poker for Pound Pups.